Okay, it is day 2 back in communist Canada. What's up, people? Day 2 back in communist Canada. I asked my wife if I had time to do a car vlog, and she said no. Here we are, people. She's not the boss of me. I'm my own man. All right, I just did a podcast with Pantelis this morning. It was amazing. I'll link it in the pinned comment so you can all see what we caught up on, having not seen each other since last summer. But now that I'm back in the asylum, now that I've gone north of the border, people.
We're through the looking glass here, people.
I figure I'll cover some stories, even if they are of limited interest to the rest of the world. They should be of massive interest to the rest of the world, because even though it's happening, this particular story in Quebec, a province of Canada, it's a lesson to the world. It's a lesson to the governments of the world as to how you, in my humble opinion, nationalize institutions. For those of you who don't know, the Francois Legault government, the sunset thief, Supreme Leader Francois Legault, his government, I don't know, I guess they might be sliding in the polls. And what do you do when you slide in the polls? You appeal to nationalist tendencies. And I say that almost non-judgmentally. Not always a bad thing to, protect your borders, protect your culture, protect your country. When you are slipping in the polls, what would one do in the province of Quebec, as Francois Legault has done time and time again? Whip up the language debate. You'll recall after he started losing a little bit of popularity from some of the COVID measures, he then went and revamped Bill 101, which is the language laws of Quebec, to make them even more stringent than they had been for the last 4 decades, because those stringent language laws, which literally resulted in the creation of language police, were so effective that after 40 years they hadn't achieved their desired results. So what do you do with a bad, broken, useless law that doesn't produce effects after nearly 4 decades? Make an even stricter one? Whatever. This time around, Francois Legault is looking to, this is my humble opinion, nationalize the education institutions of Quebec. He announced that he was going to basically double the tuition of English-speaking educational institutions, universities, McGill, Concordia, Bishops in Quebec. Just go ahead and double the tuition for out-of-province, out-of-country students. For McGill, I think it was going to go from like 8,000 and change to 17,000 and change. This is Canadian for you Americans out there, but it's still pretty big bucks. And there was sufficient uproar, sufficient backlash that they've announced they're only going to up the tuition from whatever it is, 8,000 and give or take, to 13,000, which is still a lot for out-of-province, out-of-country students. Not just that, however. Not just that they're going to say, oh yeah, McGill, great institution, used to be moderately affordable, we're just going to go jack up the price 50%. They've created a linguistic language requirement. Not only is it going to cost you 50% more to study at McGill if you're out of province, by the end of your degree, you have to be proficient in French. 80% of students from out of the province, out of the country, need to be proficient in French, meaning they need to be able to maintain a conversation in French, and they're going to have to pass a test. Totally unrealistic. Ridiculous, not idealistic, impossible. Anybody who's ever tried to learn a second language in their later years, it's impossible to learn it to the degree to be proficient for conversational purposes within 3 years. I mean, the obvious intent behind all of this is only to encourage French-speaking students to come in and now get charged up the wazoo to study at McGill. Unrealistic. We'll see where it goes. McGill already feeling the brunt. McGill, by the way, is my alma mater. It's where I did my undergrad honors philosophy with a minor in Eastern European history. So it's not that this is far from home. And I was an in-province student, so I think I paid like $2,000 a semester at the time. 2002, for anybody who's interested. 98 to 2002. So this story kind of touches home, but this story is emblematic of what is wrong with Quebec. What is wrong with socialized institutions, education, willy-nilly. We're going to impose linguistic politics on education. McGill, I believe, Montreal as a whole, I think has 30,000 international students in its population. They bring in a lot of money, rental, all sorts of other things. They add to the economy. It used to be that you'd study at McGill, you'd study at Concordia, you'd study at Bishops, you would study in a French environment, so you would adapt, pick up some of the French while studying in a French environment. It used to be that it was, it was an asset. It was an added bonus to studying in Montreal. Now it's becoming a deterrent, where anybody who doesn't speak French is going to say, above and beyond paying 50% more for tuition if I'm out of province, that's a lot of money. I'm going to be tested in French and have to pass a proficiency test. I'm just not going to do it. And lo and behold, that's exactly what's going to happen. McGill has announced that they're going to subsidize the increased cost themselves, which in the short run will amount to $40 to $90 million in losses, because they're going to subsidize the added tuition that the Francois Legault sunset thief, supreme leader, dictator that Francois Legault is. They're going to subsidize it. And it's going to cost them anywhere between $40 and $90 million, which they hope that investment's going to pay off in the long run. What is this going to do? This is a way to nationalize institutions. Let's go and impose some language laws, deter foreign students from coming, or only encourage those foreign students that we want. And in the meantime, well, it'll be good for the local Quebec population, because there might be a few extra positions available at that university now that apparently McGill has noticed, just by virtue of the threat of this price increase, a 20% drop-off in admissions. Now, apparently it's only going to take effect, even if it goes into effect, in 2025. And they haven't really worked out the final kinks, whether it's going to be 80% of these students from abroad that have to be proficient in French, or they're going to lower it to something more reasonable, more attainable, more commensurate with who might be French-speaking foreign students in the first place. But it's nuts. It's causing a lot of uproar in the province. It's a great distraction from all other things, because it will rally the nationalist, separatist sort of base in Quebec, as if this could possibly be good for the city as a whole, the province as a whole, the institutions as a whole. It can't be. And by the way, it might hurt McGill. McGill's got a very, very big donor base. Concordia doesn't have a McGill-type donor base. It's going to hurt Concordia even more. There's going to be some exceptions for Bishop's University, for anybody who doesn't know where that is. It's a smaller Eastern Townships University where my late father-in-law went, so also close to home. This is going to hurt McGill. It's going to hurt Concordia more. It's going to hurt the city as a whole. And it's going to confirm yet again that Quebec is not a place that is open to the general population. It's not a place that's open for business. You want to come here, it's going to add costs and administrative bureaucracies to your business. You want to come here and study? You're going to have to be proficient in French by the end of the 3 or 3.5 year program. And apparently, in order to become proficient, it's like 200 hours. It would be like an extra semester studying French just to be proficient. You want to know what the Legault government could have done? My 2 cents, Supreme Leader Francois, if you're listening, instead of making it mandatory to be proficient after the end of your 3 years, you could jack up the tuition and then give a credit to anybody who could pass a French proficiency test at the end of your 3 or 4 year program, so that if you do go ahead and master the French language, you have a financial incentive to do so. They'll reimburse you the jacked up tuition for the university. And if you don't want to, good, you'll just come and pay the Quebec tax to study in Montreal. That would have been a pretty decent compromise. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe you can adopt the Viva Frei amendment. But lo and behold, that is what's going on in Quebec. More of the same. It's a unique province. I don't have any problem with laws that are intended to protect, preserve, and promulgate a culture. The bottom line, however, is that sometimes laws are not ever going to be able to do that. And when you've had laws in place for decades that have not yet done that, more laws are not going to do it. More restrictions are not going to do it. And all it's going to do is cripple Montreal, cripple the Montreal economy. It might free up some housing. You know, if you have 30,000 fewer international students, maybe it'll free up some housing. So maybe it'll solve the housing crisis in Montreal and Quebec. But it's just a terrible idea. And it makes Quebec, Montreal, the province, not alluring to foreigners. And it makes it look something of a backwards culture, a backwards society, a very linguistically unfree society, which many people have been saying for a long time. So that's it. I got to go get the kids and go to a Christmas party, a pajama Christmas party. Yeah. All right, people, stay tuned. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Stay tuned for day 3 from the asylum. That being my homeland, my home province, my home city, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Peace out, peeps. Booyah! If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. Nelson Mandela. That is deep. Children, let's go to the party now.